rescind that 2014 memo and issue a new memo stating that Canada does have a duty of care towards locally engaged staff, so this kind of betrayal doesn't happen ever again?
Well, Heather, in the context particularly of what was happening in Ukraine, we went above what was technically the duty of care because we wanted to make sure that since lives could be at risk because the threat of invasion was real and imminent, we offered Canadian locally engaged staff to come to Canada. Some have come, some have decided to stay in Ukraine. We also offered them to work from outside of Kyiv, even though the Canadian diplomats had left. And also we offered them.
But it is worth noting that didn't launch until a month
Thank you, Ms.
after
McPherson.
the embassy closed
the
and the other
your,
staff were evacuated.
Round. Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Genuis, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to follow up on the Globe and Mail story about the locally engaged staff at the Canadian Embassy. Minister, the source for the Globe story is 3 separate Canadian diplomats with direct knowledge of these events. Now, you've offered a very qualified denial of the story. You said that you were not aware of kill lists that specifically named Canadians. But that was not the question, and that was not the Globe and Mail story. Their story was that Canadian embassy staff were likely on lists, and that the Five Eyes briefed Canadian officials that Ukrainians who worked for Western embassies were likely on the list, and further, that the Canadian embassy made a decision not to pass that information along. So, Minister, to be very clear, is the Globe and Mail story, in your view, correct or not?
Well, what I can tell you is that I didn't have that information. My team didn't have that information. You heard the deputy, the department didn't have that information. So we need to get to the bottom of this. Can you just clarify,
what do you mean by the department didn't have that information?
Do you mean
no employee of the Canadian government had this information? Who's we, though?
We, so it's myself, my political staff, and Global Affairs Canada, according to what the deputy has just mentioned. We had no information regarding the fact that there was lists specifically targeted Canadian diplomats and locally engaged staff in Kyiv.
But that is not the question. The Globe and Mail story said that Five Eyes gave a brief to the Canadian embassy that it was likely that Ukrainian nationals who were locally engaged staff working at Western embassies were likely on the list. Can you please just give us a clear answer? In your view, is the Globe and Mail story true or false?
What I can tell you is that
is the Globe and Mail story true or false? Yes or no?
What I can tell you is that indeed, and the Americans made that intelligence public, there were some lists specifically targeting Ukrainian people in Ukraine. And of course, we were preoccupied with these targeting. Now, in the context of having any information regarding Canadians being on these lists, Canadian diplomats, locally engaged staff, we had no information regarding this. And so that is why it's really important that Canadians be clear on that, because of course, it is about the government of Canada's responsibility towards not only the people that work for us, but people also that are serving us while we are in Ukraine.
I asked a clear question. You didn't provide an answer.
No, I provide a very clear
Minister,
answer.
I have the floor. We had 3 diplomats speaking to the Globe and Mail, potentially at some risk to their own careers.
Well, I would be very
interested
in having that information.
Yeah, I'm sure
because I think it's very important that we get to the
Globe.
bottom of this story.
And, Minister,
because you can be sure, Garnet, that this
Garrett,
is something that I take very seriously.
It's my
time. Life or death situation.
Yes, Minister,
and as a minister,
Mr. Genuis, you have the floor.
A human being, I'm very concerned to make sure
and you
that
won't
we
tell us
do
whether
the right
you have
thing.
that information.
And so,
now
Garnet,
you're
I'm
trying
sorry.
to take over the time, Minister.
No, I'm not trying to take over the time. I'm presenting
you
have
what
not
is
answered
the
moral
question.
decision,
It was a clear
the right moral
question.
decision.
It was a clear question I asked you, which was whether or not the Globe and Mail story is correct according to your information. You chose not to answer it, and I think most Canadians will conclude
according
that
to
that
my
story
information,
is accurate,
I
and
don't
frankly,
agree with
it
the facts that are
is
stated.
disgraceful. Thank you.